What's good? It's your boy Fanon. Man, I'm looking forward to it. We ain't too far away from Terence Crawford's uh debut fight at 147 pounds against Jeff Horn. And I'm telling you, this is the fight that I'm looking forward to very much because this is gonna tell me how Terence Crawford is gonna go a long ways towards letting people know, how real Terence Crawford is at 147 pounds, moving up from being, the cat that was most dominant at 140, dominated at 135, but now he's moving up a weight class to fight the WBO welterweight champion Jeff Horn, and hopefully set up for a real good fight against the major welterweight, the top welterweight champions. And it's also interesting because, after this fight happens on June 9th, we back to the conversation about who the number one pound for pound dude is, right? Now, if he winds up beating an undefeated champion in Jeff Horn, wins his belt in his third weight, wins a championship in his third weight class, he stays right where he was in my book as the number one pound for pound fighter in the world. Now, that's no disrespect to Vasily Lomachenko. I think Vasily Lomachenko is a terrific fighter, but in my book, it's Terence Crawford. With the retirement of Andre Ward, the only way right now that Terence Crawford would lose that is by winning, is by Jeff Horn either losing or Andre Ward saying he's coming out of retirement. But in the lead up to this fight, Jeff Horn is talking about some stuff about needing to get he plans on getting his respect early from Terence Crawford. Also, and it's real funny, man, because I think that his team is trying to play a lot of, I don't know if he's playing mind games with Jeff Horn. I mean, his team playing mind games with Jeff Horn, or whether Jeff Horn, they're just really trying to get their fan base in Australia excited by making Terence Crawford a boogeyman. But whatever it goes, man, there's a lot of talk coming from them that I think is some pretty good promotion. Now, before I do that, man, I definitely want to say I'm gonna do a live stream. And also, I want to say shout out to my brothers in the LDBC. Man, I really appreciate everything you guys are doing for boxing. And it's very, very nice to be associated with you guys. And so if you guys have not checked out the Smoke City Mobcast that they do on Wednesdays, this actually going to be this evening. Definitely check out Smoke City Mobcast. Also, I'm going to be doing a live stream probably a little bit later today. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to be on the Smoke City Mobcast or not, but the best way to know about the live streams that happen on this channel is to subscribe and hit the bell icon. You subscribe and hit the bell icon, then you can get notified when they happen. And also, I want to really say thanks to the people that donate in the super chats, the Venmo, and Patreon. The reason that we have this channel is to raise money for causes and for young athletes. And you guys, the support that you give really is allowing us to do some really good things. So thank you very much. And again, I hope you accept my invitation to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Now, let me go through a few things that have been said just to give you background on this on what I mean. You had one article said, that Crawford's trying to play mind games and it motivates me. WBO welterweight champion Jeff Horn believes mandatory challenger Terence Crawford is trying to play mind games with him. The two sides were set to fight in April at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, but the contest was pushed back after Crawford withdrew with a hand injury. Initially, the contest was going to happen in New York City at Madison Square Garden before shifting to Las Vegas. Top Rank, who led the promotion of the card, rescheduled the fight for June 9th at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. And recently, the camps of both fighters were fighting over the gloves of choice for the latest contest, but after initially it was said that Crawford would use controversial Everlast MX horsehair gloves. But on Sunday, Brian McIntyre's insisted that his fighter would not use those gloves. Horn is not bothered by any pre-fight drama. I think Crawford's team are trying to play mind games, changing the date, changing the venue, postponing the fight, and now changing the gloves. Horn said to Courier Mail. I knew they would be throwing curveballs at me left, right, and center, but nothing phases me. But not much phases me, and I'm ready for anything. It motivates me. It doesn't matter what gloves I wear. When I hit a guy, it's gonna hurt him. Horn's trainer Glenn Rushton is actually shocked that the Everlast MX gloves have yet to be banned from the sport. During his career, Floyd Mayweather refused to fight anyone who wore Everlast MX. It amazes me that there are no standardized specification for boxing gloves, he said. The only stipulation is weight, and that's appalling because in some gloves you can push all the weight of the padding away from the knuckles. There should be uniform rules over the thickness of the padding and for the density of the foam. Now, but Crawford's coach had come back and talked about it and said, man, stop crying. We don't cheat. The controversy regarding the gloves of choice has continued to rage forward for the upcoming welterweight showdown between WBO world champion Jeff Horn and mandatory challenger Terence Crawford. In a recent interview, Horn's trainer Glenn Rushton claimed that an Everlast representative informed him that Crawford intended to wear controversial Everlast MX gloves. Rushton lashed out, stating the boxer would use the same gloves because Crawford was nervous and looking for an advantage. But Crawford's trainer, Brian McIntyre, reacted and sent an email to Horn's promoter, Dean Lonergan, making it clear that his team is not planning to use Everlast MX glove. McIntyre said in the email, we don't wear horsehair gloves, so stop crying like we're trying to cheat. That's not our style. Make sure Horn comes to the fight ready. Quit trying to use this as a distraction because it does not work. Have a good day. The contest is scheduled to take place on June 9th in MGM Grand in Las Vegas. ESPN's new app will carry the fight in the United States. Let me pause in that and just say boo. Paying $5 to see that fight. I mean, I don't mind, I want to see the fight, so I got the app. I got the app a while ago. But it still takes me off. But anyway, Lonergan is still concerned because their side has no idea what brand of gloves Crawford is planning to use, and the fight is a few short weeks away. Brian McIntyre says Crawford won't be using them now, Lonergan said to the Courier Mail, but he has yet to inform us of what type of gloves will be used. This is a very important issue. Horn arrived on the world scene last July when he pulled off a huge upset in the 12th round unanimous decision over Manny Pacquiao before a crowd of 51,000 at Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane, Australia. He retained the title in the fall with the stoppage victory over voluntary challenger Gary Cochran. Yeah, so that's pretty much all the beef back and forth about them. Before that there was the injury to the hand of Terence Crawford. I gotta admit that, I took that injured hand thing with a grain of salt because it's mighty convenient that it wind up being a fight that turned out to be on this ESPN app when it was pretty much widely known that that Bob Arum had wanted Manny Pacquiao to fight. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Mike Alvarado. He wanted to fight in a co-main event from a different stadium, and but as a result of Manny Pacquiao not wanting to do that, the fight could no longer be put on pay-per-view. So I think it's reasonable for him to assume, or for people to assume, that even though the injury to Terence Crawford's hand might have been real, that there were other reasons at play for why that fight got moved. Now this horsehair glove thing, I'm not buying it, man. And even just the fact that Glenn Rushton would say that somebody who was trying to sell him gloves, told him that Terence Crawford was, planning on using horsehair gloves. I mean, that doesn't necessarily make that true. And so I just think that that's just a bunch of whatever, man. It's just a bunch of whatever. But it is, I do think, a good way for Jeff Horn to try to create curiosity and create a buzz in Australia about the fight. Uh, because, my understanding is because it's not on pay-per-view, that because of the change of the date, that the fight in Australia is not going to be pay-per-view. And that, could cost that cat, several $1,000,000, right? For the promoter and the fighter. And consequently the manager. So I can understand why they're up in arms a little bit, man. But I say, hey, man, blame that on Bob Arum. Don't put that on Terence Crawford. But as far as how the fight goes, look, I mean, if Terence Crawford, firstly, and I'm going to say this again and again, I have Terence Crawford winning this fight. And the way that I think that Terence Crawford is going to win this fight is I think he's going to probably win it on cuts. Because Jeff Horn's face has opened up something nasty in the last two fights. Now, if he was wearing horsehair gloves, and I can't speak to whether or not those gloves are are cheater gloves or not. I mean, I can't speak to that. I won't speak to that. But if it's something where it affects the amount of if it allows you to increase the force of a punch to somebody's cut, that very well could help Terence Crawford cut his face up. And that's how I see the fight ending. I see the fight ending on cuts, and with Terence Crawford winning, Terence Crawford getting that belt. But it could be a situation where it could be a tougher fight for Terence Crawford than a lot of people expect. I've said this before. Jeff Horn fought Manny Pacquiao. A lot of people, pretty much everybody was discounting Jeff Horn's chances to beat Manny Pacquiao. And having watched the fights that he had against Randall Bailey and I think Funeka, watched several other of his fights, I was like, man, this is a tough kid, man. This guy can fight, So, and I did several videos early on about Jeff Horn being a live underdog for Manny Pacquiao. And I think could very well be the same thing here, where he's a live underdog to Terence Crawford. I think that this might be Terence Crawford's toughest fight. And I think it's definitely going to be a tougher fight. I believe, I can't say definitely it's going to be a tougher fight. I believe that it's going to be a harder fight for Terence Crawford than Julius Ndungo was. I think skill-wise, that it's probably not as difficult a fight as the kid was. The name of the guy, the Dominican Felix. His name is skipping my mind right now. Felix Diaz, I believe his name was. The Olympic gold medalist out of it's Felix Diaz, the Olympic gold medalist out of the Dominican Republic. I think it's going to be it's not going to be as tough a fight because I think that Felix Diaz is a more polished fighter and a better fighter than Jeff Horn is. Just my naked eye assessment of it. But because of the size, difference between Terence Crawford and Jeff Horn, I think that it could be a more difficult fight. Now the question is going to be, on the other hand is if Terence Crawford can really walk through Jeff Horn. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If he can walk through Jeff Horn, then hey man, he's proven as far as his physical strength goes that he's a danger for anybody in the welterweight division. Skill wise, I think that it's obvious that he's already has a skill set that is going to be difficult for anybody at 147 pounds. And honestly, just as is, without even bringing size into it, I would have Terence Crawford. I would favor Terence Crawford over everybody at 147 pounds, with the exception of Errol Spence. Because I think Errol Spence, I just have a feeling that that Errol Spence is a he's a special kind of fighter, man. The way that he goes to the body, his strength, and I think from what I understand, he's got a lot more to offer than what he shows. It just so happens to be that just his walk straight to you and tear you up game plan is more than enough to get, all of the world-class fighters that he's fought up out of there. And so will he be able to walk straight towards Terence Crawford and do that? I have a feeling that if Terence Crawford really doesn't have the power to keep him off of him, that he can do that. Because he's so good at cutting off the ring. And Terence Crawford also has a tendency to want to exchange. And if he gets in there and he wants to exchange and he's taking shot for shot with Errol Spence, I think that's a lot of trouble. But the other champions, man, I'm telling you, the biggest fight that I want to see, a fight that I would love to see with Terence Crawford, is a Terence Crawford Danny Garcia fight. Now, I think Danny Garcia is trying to go in the direction of, and shout out to him for saying it, if he's able to beat Sean Porter, he wants to go the direction of an Errol Spence Jr. fight. I think Danny Garcia is going to get beat up and knocked out, but I give him a lot of credit. I give him a lot of credit for doing that. But a Danny Garcia Terence Crawford fight, I would love to see that as well. Now, if Jeff Horn wins this fight, that's a very interesting proposition as well, because I don't think that means that Top Rank loses that welterweight championship, because Jeff Horn was under he had a 2-fight option. Top Rank had a 2-fight option on him for having been for them having given him a shot at Manny Pacquiao. And ain't that ironic? Bob Arum is the one that walks out with the best deal out of the contract between Manny Pacquiao and Jeff Horn. He was in a win-win situation because if Manny Pacquiao won, he still had Manny Pacquiao, and if Jeff Horn wins, then he gets a 2-fight option, and he had a rematch clause for Manny Pacquiao, but the Manny Pacquiao rematch clause dictated that the fight had to be held in Australia, which means he could put him back in there with Jeff Horn and get a rematch. It's just the whole situation really worked very nicely for Top Rank. Even following behind that now, where another top rank fighter was immediately put as the mandatory challenger for Jeff Horn's belt. And when I say immediately, that was he was made mandatory before. Terence Crawford was made Jeff Horn's mandatory before Jeff Horn took his first voluntary defense, which was against Gary Cochran. And other sanctioning bodies have allowed people to have voluntary defenses, more than one voluntary defense after that. And it wasn't like Terence Crawford was already named a mandatory for Manny Pacquiao, where under the rules of some organizations, you have to, the champion inherits the mandatory obligations of the champion, that he beat. It was just all nice and neat to the advantage of Bob Arum. But if Jeff Horn was able to beat Terence Crawford, then I think people really got to treating Jeff Horn as if this guy's one of the top fighters in the sport. Because to me, Terence Crawford is the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. And I think that is a fair assessment of it, because he's already unified. He's unified the 140-pound division. He won a title in 135 pounds. He is as good a fighter technically and is difficult to beat a fighter on a pound, from what I can see, in a pound-for-pound matchup, is anybody else. Or more so than anybody else. His ability to switch between southpaw and orthodox, him to be able to box, him to be able to slug. He's very, very hard to hit when he doesn't want to be hit. He just has a lot of tools in his He has a lot of tools in his toolbox. So, I mean, but it is what it is. But I do think a lot of this talk from Jeff Horn just happens to be, ways for him to promote the fight. But we're looking forward to it, and hopefully the fight will, be an exciting fight and do well. And with that, I'm out. Peace.